They make up the Cooligans. Season 2 of their show coming out on Fubo Sports Network, a free channel on a multitude of platforms. Also on Twitter at Soccer Cooligans. Alexis, thanks for joining me. Congratulations on season 2. It's not easy to get a second season of anything, so you must feel pretty good with where you guys are at.
Ain't that the truth? Let's hope it's just as easy to get a season 3. Thank you so much, and thanks for having me on, Brandon. This is dope.
So what can people expect when they find their show, your show? We'll start there.
I think this is what makes us different than every other show is that we're both stand-up comedians who happen to love soccer, and we love talking about it. So, whereas a lot of shows you'll watch, you'll hear a lot of hot takes about formations and what player belongs in what position. We don't know any of that stuff. I mean,
you and me both, buddy.
Yeah, Brandon, you get it, right? Like, look, there's people that could talk me under a table with regard to what information and breakdown. And look, we do actually know a lot about formations, and I love tactics, and I love talking about that stuff. But the purpose of the show is to have fun. It's, we hope that it's like sitting next to two funny people at a bar, right after the game is done, or, maybe you have a bunch of funny friends that are hanging out with you at home on a couch, drinking a couple beers, watching the game. That's the feeling we hope that people get when they watch the show. And it seems to be what people enjoy about it.
Well, and I think that that's the reason why soccer is growing in popularity in this country. It's not because of formation. Certainly you have the tactical, analytical mind that just is obsessed with the sport. They've been playing it since a young age. Maybe they even coach it at some sort of youth or advanced level. But it's that casual fan that's really making up this explosion. And, you and I were talking before we went ahead and started this formal interview. Is like, I just feel like it's sort of missing from the landscape of the growth of the media side of soccer in this country. And that's what you guys bring to the table. And that's why I think, I really wanted to have a chat with you about it. And I love the sort of way that you bring that content to the table.
Thank you. Yeah. And I've said this before. It seems like a lot of soccer content when we started in 2015 was former players, and they could really give you a lot of information about what's happening on the field and what it's like to be a pro player. But the culture portion of it, they don't really understand because they're outside of that. What it's like standing, being in the stands or sitting in those seats, and what it's like being just a big soccer fan. They don't get that feeling because they play pro. It's a different world. So we get to bring that. So like you said, hopefully that the media pays a bit more attention to what the culture around the sport is, because it's so different than every other sport where being a soccer fan is almost like a 24/7, a personality trait. You know what I mean? Like it's something that it's the way you dress, it's the way you talk, it's what you watch Saturday mornings. It's not cartoons. We're watching English people beat each other up on a pitch. Like that's what we watch. So it's like a different world.
And there are different levels of the soccer sports fan, specifically in this country. Do you find that most soccer fans are only fans of soccer? They have we're speaking in generalities, of course, but where that's all they're focused on, and it's not I'm soccer plus NFL plus college football plus basketball, because once you get into the soccer world, there are so many avenues to go down, and there's so many hours in the day, Alexis. So you've got to make a decision. How do you see the general soccer fan in this country and how they divvy up their interests?
I think it's very similar to how my life was, like when I started really paying attention really closely to soccer, little by little, as you said, there's so much soccer to consume that little by little other things start to. I'm technically a Yankee fan because I grew up that way, but I couldn't name you 4 players on the Yankees anymore. There's too many baseball games. I'm a massive Knicks fan, but I perform at night, so it's really hard for me to keep track of all the different Knicks games. I'm still a massive Knicks fan, but that's probably the only other sport I really pay attention to. The Giants, I know they play once a week. I can't keep up with what's happening. I try my hardest. It really is 90% soccer all over the world, and 10% here's the Knicks stuff I can fit in.
So you're a stand-up comedian as well. Mm-hmm. Do you fit any soccer content into your stand-up routine?
I do. I try to be as general as possible, because what you'll find is if there's 300 people in the audience, one person in that audience will understand a soccer joke. Maybe there'll be that person will understand an MLS joke, So like you have to be very specific with what you say. But I like to talk about it in a general sense, especially because I tend to wear a lot of soccer kits or jerseys on stage just to keep that brand going. People take a photo of me, they see me in a kit. It it extends past just me being on stage. But We actually did a tour called the World Cup Comedy Tour in 2018, and we were going to bring it back in 2020, but for obvious reasons, we couldn't do it. And we did 8 cities, and where we literally performed for soccer fans, and it was out of this world. One of the stops we did was actually at Audi Field. This was in 2019, an Audi Field where DC United plays, and we got to perform in the stadium. So, like, there's been so many cool things that have happened where we have gotten to do just like TAM jokes and GAM jokes and, MLS rules jokes. But for the most part, you really can't.
For somebody that hasn't been in the supporter section of an MLS game, could you tell them what exactly they're missing?
I don't know. If you've ever been on the New York City subway, it's about the same thing. It's a lot of craziness, a lot of noise, people yelling stuff. Sometimes people yelling stuff in unison. But one thing I will say is we've gotten to travel to so many different cities and see supporter sections. And even in like cities where you think like, oh, there's not that big of a fan base, like no disrespect, but New England Revolution have a relatively small fan base that go to Gillette. But when you stand in that supporter section or when you go near it, you realize even if it's only a couple hundred people that are here, they're wildly committed. And I think if there's no way, and I've said this before, I pitched a series where I bring like a famous or relatively famous comedian to a match with Christian and I, and we did one episode with Pete Lee, who's been on the Tonight Show a bunch of times. And he even said after that, he's like, I can't wait to go to another one. If you stand in or near a supporter section, there's nothing in you that will stop you from saying, I want to do this again. It just becomes so addictive. So I think what you're missing is this atmosphere that's unlike anything else in sports. A bunch of people chanting, drumming, singing in unison for the entire 90 minutes. It's one of those things that just you'll never understand it until you experience it for yourself.
So I'll probably get Orlando City fans all riled up with this one, but you've been to a number of different stadiums. You've been around a lot of different soccer fans in this country. Which fan base is the most rabid, the most intense of all that are in MLS?
That's a great question. And there's different levels of intensity. I would say where I felt like it was overwhelming and it would like take over you is probably in LAFC for the 32-52. It's just one of those things where it's so intense. And it's one of those things where like, they're fans, you're not going to get attacked. This is what they're doing is they're chanting and they're singing in unison. But that standing section, the way it's built, it's almost like a wall and coming at you, primal, your primal instincts take over and say like, whoa, this is a lot's happening in front of me. It feels like it can get out of hand at any moment. And look, Orlando fans are going to be upset about me saying this, but there is something beautiful culture-wise, especially me being a massive hip-hop fan, about what Atlanta has been able to do. Being in that stadium, being there for MLS Cup for that final, it's just, there was something so beautiful. Like, when we started Cooligans, we said, yo, we're hip-hop fans. We're from the hood. We're both Latino. We're going to be talking about it. We're going to make hip-hop references in soccer, which at the time just wasn't done in this country. And to see what Atlanta's been able to do, there's a reason why we say it feels like our second home, because everything that we try to do, the culture we try to push forward, they're also doing the same thing. And not saying Orlando doesn't do that. I love Orlando's. I love the supporters. I love the stadium. I think they do an incredible job. But there's something about Atlanta that just felt really special.
And it's crazy to say that too, because they're playing in a football stadium.
It almost feels like the football team is playing in a soccer stadium.
That's fair. I mean, you watch both of those atmospheres. Atlanta United a little bit down right now, but when they were hot, that product was hotter. Just, yeah. I mean, from my view in Orlando, that product was hotter than what the Falcons were putting out there. It really is. It's kind of crazy to wrap your mind around that.
I said to someone in the front office, I said, it's so cool that you guys let the Falcons play in your stadium, because that's how it felt. It felt
was there just sort of like beads of sweat and uncomfortability when you said that?
Whenever I think, oh, this will be fun, that's generally when the person in front of me starts to get nervous. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Christian is the nice one.
So you mentioned pitching an idea for a soccer related series. I guess I'd be remiss if I didn't ask. Now, I haven't watched it, but everybody that I have talked to has suggested it. Have you seen Ted Lasso, and what do you think of that show and its success?
I think if you've never even heard the word soccer, you are losing out if you're not watching Ted Lasso.
That's what everybody says.
It's the show the world needs right now. And it's hard to explain that because it feels like it's getting overhyped. And I honestly don't think any of the hype can match just how well written it is. As a comedian, and knowing some of the writers on it, by the way, just to see what they've been able to do with this character, with this. I mean, it's like 30 Rock. I don't know if you were a fan of 30 Rock.
Yeah.
The sketch show didn't really matter at the end of the day. It became about relationships. That's what all shows are about. Relationship and conflict. The fact that they've been able to weave soccer into a show that is so heartfelt and so beautiful and absolutely hilarious is just absolutely incredible. And honestly, I think it's helping, the quote unquote stock price of soccer in the U.S., because so many people are paying attention to Ted Lasso that I've gotten texts from friends that are not soccer fans saying like, oh, this show is so cool. Is soccer really like this? And I'm like, oh, we got more fans.
My sales pitch is done. Mm-hmm. Ted Lasso did it for me. I went back and watched a video you guys have up on your YouTube channel where you had a chance to interview Megan Rapinoe not too long ago from the U.S. women's soccer team. They won the bronze at the Tokyo Olympics. What was that like? Kind of a dream come true situation for you, I would imagine.
If you're talking about the one we did on the TV show, that was actually the second time we interviewed her. The first time was on stage at the ICC tournament in Charlotte, and this I believe was 2019. It was absolutely out of this world. There were 3,500 people there waiting, chanting her name, and her plane had landed like 20 minutes late, so she was 20 minutes late to get to us. And actually, it ended up being about closer to 40 minutes. So they asked Christian and I to just go up there and talk to the audience. And as comedians, we started riffing and joking around. We started joking with the DJ, started playing certain songs, seeing who could dance best to it, and just having a good time. And the audience was like at a fever pitch. And at one point, I felt bad. I said, oh, no, they're probably not going to be that excited for Megan Rapinoe. As soon as Megan showed up, no one cared who we were. I mean, no. It's like being around, like almost like I joke around that she's the president of the United States. Like it feels that way. It feels like there's an aura that she carries around her that when you're around her, you just get sucked in. You get sucked into this incredible presence of hers. And she's just such a cool person. And maybe there's some people listening who don't like her. Maybe they don't like her politics. Regardless of that, she's a really cool, good person. And when you speak to her, you're like, I want to help support what it is that you're doing, And she's so funny. The women's the women's soccer team is just absolutely out of this world with personalities. It's insane. Ali Krieger, who plays in Orlando, Ashlyn Harris, who also plays in Orlando for the Pride. Two of the funniest people we've ever had on our show. And we've had comedians on,
It's those that don't try typically that end up, moving the needle, especially for those that are in the comedic world, I would imagine.
For sure.
And to see them kind of fall apart, I mean, winning the bronze, it's hard to do that. But for the standard that they built, it definitely felt like they fell short of expectation. And the dynasty of U.S. women's soccer, I'm not going to say it's over, but it certainly hit a speed bump. How disappointing was that to watch that go down just a couple months ago now?
I mean, to be honest with you, we did Christian and I hosted an event called the ICC Futures, which is a youth tournament. And Barcelona's women's youth team was going up against PDA, which is the best youth development we have here in the U.S. for women. And it's based in Jersey. And these, like, they win everything. They just don't lose. It's the best of the best. It's the Monstars. You know what I mean? It's the dream team. And Barcelona's youth team absolutely destroyed them. And everyone around me that had been around women's youth sports a lot longer than I certainly have, were all like, oh no, this is a bit of a passing of the torch because these girls would never be able to keep up with PDA. PDA is just like hammering in goals usually. So I think I kind of see changes happening. I think there's so much money in women's sports that other countries are starting to pick up on it. Other countries are starting to see, like the way the men's team is developing better players. It's because we went to France and said to Claire Fontaine, which is their development, what are you guys doing? And then, a couple years later, we start to implement those things. Everyone's implementing that. So it's going to happen. Along the way, the U.S. women's team just can't continue to win every single match. And that was Vlatko's first few losses, their coach. So, bronze is absolutely incredible. And hopefully there's a bit of a chip on their shoulder for the next World Cup to prove. Now they have something to prove. I'd rather get the bronze and lose the gold than win a World Cup. And hopefully they get to do that in Australia and New Zealand.
It happened with the U.S. men's basketball team when they won bronze. It lit a fire, and they've been winning gold ever since. So Sometimes when you have those powerful brands and they take a step back, you end up raising the talent of the game around you because everybody then wants to keep up, and it's hard to keep up with yourself sometimes. My last one for you, I'll flip to the other side of it. When are the men going to catch up? When can we see? Because that to me is when the real explosion takes place. And we've already seen it. Soccer is plenty popular in this country, but to hit that next level, which is hard to reach and compete with the likes of the NFL, the NBA, and college football in this country, the U.S. men's team needs to be great. When can we see that?
I agree. And I hope for a day when both can be great and just absolutely winning. And I know all of Europe and South America hates the fact that I just said that because they have something they can win. Excuse me. But I think it's happening. I think you're seeing the A squad for the men's national team is, I think 10 out of 11 positions are based in Europe and big squads. We're talking Barcelona, Juventus, Chelsea. These are huge, huge squads. You know, Christian Pulisic, $70 million was spent on him as a player. I said he would be the first American to go for 100. It's starting to look like that might be Gio Reyna and Dortmund. I mean, these are youth players that are being developed at a rate that we haven't seen before. A lot of it is in conjunction with MLS. And I think once you saw MLS bring in the academy system, everything changed. You know, we have to start to, you know, football/soccer is such a different sport than NFL or NBA. You can play pickup games in the NBA in the street. I grew up in Newark, New Jersey. I saw some players that were better than any NBA player, and they were playing for cash games. You don't see that in soccer. Soccer is something that's still like, no, you go for a youth travel team and things like that. Once we start to see these players developing at a rate where they've got a little sauce, and some of these European clubs want them because you want to break into the American market, but also they're good enough to play. They're not just a gimmick, and we're starting to see that. So I don't know how long it's going to take to win a World Cup on the men's side. We might be far away, but 2026, the World Cup is going to be in Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. That might be a great opportunity for us to prove that we can get past that quarterfinal. And I think we're good enough, and the squad we have seems like if they continue to develop and they stay healthy, that's a dangerous, dangerous team. I think could even be better than the sort of we're being matched up against the England team because they're fairly young as well. I think we're better at every position as long as we stay healthy.
Now I'm pumped.
Yeah.
Now I feel confident. All right. So, all right, before I let you go, you can clearly do a better job at this than I can. You guys have a lot going on with the Soccer Cooligans. Tell me everything, our listeners, where they can find you, when, and all that good stuff.
I mean, we have a TV show on Fubo. Check out FuboSportsNetwork.com if you want to stream it for free. If not, if you have the Fubo service, it's on FuboSportsNetwork.com. You could also check it out on YouTube at the Fubo Sports YouTube channel. We also have a Twitch show that we do at twitch.tv/Soccer Cooligans. You can check out all our social media, everywhere Soccer Cooligans on everything. I also personally have a show on Complex, which is on twitch.tv/Complex. That's about soccer. And I've started an Arsenal YouTube channel. If you go to youtube.com/Alexis Guerreros, that's Guerreros, and Alexis is Alexis. You can check that out. And I put all that on my personal social media, which is everything is at not Alexis, NOTALEXIS.
All right, did you guys get all that? Are we good?
I'm sure I missed something too. Oh, we have a podcast. Download our podcast. It's called the Cooligans.
Fantastic. Alexis Guerreros, kind enough to join me today. I really appreciate it. Best of luck on season 2. Again, you can find that on the Fubo Sports Network, a free channel on a multitude of platforms. Also on Twitter at Soccer Cooligans if you want to follow along with everything that Alexis and Christian have going on. Thank you so much. I really appreciated the chat, and hopefully we'll catch up soon. Vamos, Orlando.
I'm not coming back on until you watch Ted Lasso.
Deal. Once I wrap up the season, we'll do like a recap episode.
Perfect.
How about that? Thanks, Alexis.
Thank you, buddy.